This is the Full Court Press, the Bill Press Show, live on your radio and on Current TV.
Here we go. It is 20 minutes now before the top of the hour here on the Full Court Press this Tuesday morning, January 8th. I want to talk about high-speed rail and get your calls, but before we do, another little reminder for some of you and a lot of you having a hard time making ends meet at the end of the month. Here's something you ought to check out, incomeathome.com. They are America's leading work-from-home business. You've heard me talk about them before, doing business today in over 80 countries. So they know what they're doing, and they offer you an opportunity you can take advantage of no matter your age, education, or experience. You can literally earn money on your own computer from your own kitchen table 24/7. So if you're sick of living paycheck to paycheck, worried about job security or retirement, if your goal has always been to earn some extra money from home, part-time or even full-time, incomeathome.com. Check them out. They're even giving away $1,000 to somebody just for checking them out, and that somebody could be you. Visit incomeathome.com. That's incomeathome.com. Joining Team Press here at this hour, the president of the U.S. High-Speed Rail Association, Andy Kunz. Andy, nice to see you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry about this voice. We're struggling through, but
he's been yelling at his producers all morning. You'll have to forgive him.
That's what happened. So over the holidays, I saved this article, December 27, from the New York Times, on the longest bullet train ride. The Chinese ride 1,200 miles in 8 hours. This is the longest high-speed rail line in the world. The Chinese are doing it. These trains go 186 miles an hour. They cover a territory the same distance, New York to Key West. Now, for Amtrak, it takes you 30 hours just to get as far as Miami.
All right.
You can't even get to Key West, right? And they do it in air. How come the Chinese can do this and we can't? What's going on with high-speed rail in this country?
Well, the Chinese have gotten organized and focused and just did it, and we are still sitting debating whether we need it or not. And so I think we've got to really pay attention to a lot of situations and what the Chinese are doing, that it makes a lot of sense any way you look at it. And so we have to really get moving.
Well, it can't be any cheaper for them than it is for us, right?
Right.
So it's a difference that they just decide this is something we have to do, therefore we have to make this investment, even if it means going into debt?
Absolutely. And they looked at probably the different modes, and they, as their country is industrializing, they said, well, we can build highways everywhere and get everybody in cars, or we could build rail. And I think they got smart and decided that if they tried to put everybody in cars, it would be national gridlock. And with oil prices rising, they wouldn't be able to afford it. So they decided to skip that step and go straight into the futuristic transportation.
Or they could put more people in planes, but the problem with that is, as we experienced, for example, here in Washington going to New York, it doesn't make any sense to fly to New York, right?
And there's bottlenecks trying to get all those planes off the ground, and it's just not...
Plus, you've got all that airport security to deal with.
Right.
You got to be there an hour and a half ahead of time, or maybe an hour ahead of time, if it's a national airport, and you end up in LaGuardia, right?
And airplanes are also subject to rising fuel prices. See, high-speed rail is not.
Right. So what is the status of high-speed rail in this country today? And now I know Ray LaHood, good friend of ours, Secretary of Transportation, is a big champion. He's been out there pushing it. President Obama has endorsed it. But have we really made any progress?
Well, we've made a lot of progress. I mean, it does take time to get these off the ground, and when the president launched...
We don't want them off the ground, right? We want them right.
Zooming across the ground.
Thank you.
When the president launched the program, a lot of states were not ready because it was kind of a surprise. And so it takes time to actually lay out plans for this and begin to organize for it. So a lot of those things that you don't really see have been happening for the last 4 years. And California has, they started planning theirs 10 years ago. And so they were first in line for the most amount of money because they were the furthest along in their planning efforts.
So California is number one, right?
Correct.
Okay. I'm a Californian. And I know the situation in California, this line in California goes like from Stockton to Bakersfield?
Well, no, that's the first phase.
First phase,
Yeah,
okay.
That's the middle of the backbone, but it's going to connect all the way Sacramento, San Francisco, L.A., San Diego. It'll be the complete 800 and so mile system.
Why wouldn't
revolutionize that state, movement in that state?
Right. Are there any other states that are anywhere close, or they're moving ahead?
Well, you've got a private group launching a system from Vegas to Southern California. You have another private group working on a system from Dallas to Houston. You have groups in Chicago. The governor there has launched programs, Chicago, St. Louis. There's a lot of the Northeast Corridor here where we are. They're moving forward with advanced planning and upgrading that system. So there's a lot of them in the works, but it takes from the time you begin planning to the time you actually get to construction to the time you actually open the train could span 6 or 8 years. And so we started 4 years ago. We still have a few more years before we're actually going to be able to ride one.
Are these private systems getting federal dollars to help build them?
The Texas one is not. The Vegas one has applied for a RIF loan. It's not a grant, it's a loan, and they're waiting on that. They've already put a couple billion of their own money into it, and if they don't get the federal money, they will fund it privately.
So is part of the I just think I've always been a big supporter of rail, and I love taking Amtrak, and when I was living in L.A., I used to take the train to San Diego all the time. It's a beautiful run.
Right along
down
the coast,
to San
right?
Diego, yeah.
It's beautiful.
So in some parts of this country, Amtrak is really on the job, but we don't have this high-speed rail. Even from here to New York, they put in the Acela Express, which shortened the commute from 3 hours to 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Right.
No, not that I don't appreciate that 15 minutes, but that's hardly high-speed rail.
Well,
right?
the problem with it is that to build these systems, it's expensive because you need really separate, dedicated infrastructure. You can't use the shared systems with freight and the old track that meander a lot. That you have to have straightaways, and so that's the complicated part. So the Acela was kind of a compromise where they upgraded it to a certain point and they got better trains, but they didn't really build the true high-speed infrastructure. So they sort of did half the system for half the money. So now they're talking about doing the other half and really upgrading it and getting the 200-mile-an-hour trains.
You mentioned that several governors turned this money down, I think very unwisely, short-sighted.
Yep.
John Kasich, as I recall, correct?
Ohio, Wisconsin, and Florida.
Oh, my God. John Kasich, Scott Walker, and Rick Scott. Something else they have in common, right?
And they were working together when they did this. This wasn't just coincidence. They were it was trying to attack the president and attack the whole high-speed rail program. But now those are the three most unpopular governors in the country. And most of their people in those states are all mad now that they didn't move forward with those projects.
I mean, you could see the Florida particularly is made for high-speed rail.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
look at the shape of the state, right? I mean, you can see that.
And
boom.
the number of tourists that come from countries that all ride high-speed trains at home. So they get there and they're ready to get on it, and there is no train. They have to get a rental car.
Is the problem getting support for high-speed rail in this country that the people are not using trains or not?
No, because there are other countries.
What are the ridership numbers?
Well, Amtrak riderships are soaring given the old system they have. I mean, it's not that there's not the riders. If you build it, they will come. This is one of those situations, and there's many systems around the world where there were no trains before, such as between Paris and London. There was never any trains connecting. There wasn't even any connection at all. It was planes and boats. As soon as they opened that line, the trains are packed day in and day out.
The Eurostar.
Exactly.
Carol and I took it last summer. It is phenomenal.
Wonderful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pleasure to ride that. You don't even feel like you're going on a trip. You normally think about going on a trip. Oh, I got to deal with the airlines and security, and you almost say, well, maybe I don't want to go on a trip. But when you have a train like the Eurostar, you look forward to the trip.
Will the American people support high-speed rail? Are we doing enough? Will Congress support it? 866-55-PRESS is the toll-free number. Andy Kunz is the president of the U.S. High-Speed Rail Association. You can follow their good work at USHSR, USHSR.com. So you mentioned you've got a little summit coming up here in Washington to build some more support for this. Early February. Tell us about mid-February.
February 11th through the 13th, right here in D.C. We will be bringing together political leaders, the administration, a lot of the international high-speed rail experts, business leaders from around the country to really move forward with plans and kind of educate people and rally people up. And so we're looking forward to that. We expect a couple hundred people and exhibitors and everything.
What has to happen to really kick this into gear? More money from Congress, or what?
Absolutely, and that's the problem. Congress is still dragging their feet, and they're kind of stuck in 1950s and 60s thinking that we're pouring billions of dollars, continuing to add more lanes to the roads and all that, when most people see that roads are kind of reached their limit, and now we need to move to this other form of transportation, and Congress is slow to come around. There's a number of members who do support this and are trying to do it, but there's enough of them who don't and are continuing to block funding for it.
Yeah, I mean, when you can see, you see that Congress is willing to turn down funding for the victims of Hurricane Sandy, right?
No, yeah,
they're not likely, some of those same people, so they're not likely
exactly the same people
to write a check for high-speed rail, which they probably see as a boondoggle, and fairyland or whatever is never going to happen.
And yet, when you really look at, and a lot of them, unfortunately, there are Republicans who support high-speed rail, but there are more Republicans who don't, and it doesn't really make sense, because if you really look at the issues that are near and dear to Republicans' heart, high-speed rail addresses every one of them. You know, saving money, pro-business, national security. They all can be solved with high-speed rail for less money than if we spend it on 6 other things. So, I mean, there really is no reason to be against this.
Yeah, take those people to France and let them take the bullet train, right,
exactly,
from Paris to Marseille or Paris to Nice or whatever, and then tell them it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And see how full the trains are, too.
See how full the trains are, yeah.
With business people and tourists and everybody, teenagers, everybody are riding them.
And dogs, too, by the way.
I have a quick comment from Twitter, because we're tweeting at BP Show, and one person writes and says, do the auto industry and oil associations fight high-speed rail?
Good question.
How do they sort of figure into this?
I would say the auto industry probably has in the past. They have less money to fight it. The oil industry is the lead group who is fighting this.
No kidding.
No question about it. They're funding think tanks, and they're always writing all these op-eds and calling it boondoggles, and yet you don't hear them calling road projects boondoggles or other projects. They just selectively pick out rail. No matter where they are in the country, it's always they're going to be empty trains. They're trains to nowhere. They use the same buzzwords over and over and over again. Then when these trains open and they're packed, then they go away and go and attack other rail projects. So it's a business preservation technique is what they're doing. I mean, it really is going to impact oil sales.
Yeah, it's like the auto companies that went after tore up the red cars in Los Angeles and destroyed that great transit system. They're still the same old
people.
Game. Dennis is up in Buffalo, New York. Hey, Dennis. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Bill. Great topic.
Thank you.
I have. We were recently going to get so-called high-speed rail here in Buffalo by Governor Cuomo, go from Buffalo to Rochester, and then there was talk that they may even reopen it used to be a Pittsburgh-Buffalo line at once upon a time, but somebody killed that project years ago. I think what's really going on is the politics, because the economy could really boom if you can get that infrastructure going. They have to hire people to work the trains. Somebody has to build the tracks. You have to put in certain
Dennis, just about out of time. I want to get a quick comment from Andy. He's right in terms of the economic boom to Western New York.
Layers and layers of benefits. It will create jobs, construction to build it. Then it will create jobs to operate it. Then it will encourage hotels and real estate development. It will encourage people to travel more because it's easy. I mean, it'll stimulate the economy in 10 different ways.
Yeah. Hey, Andy, you're doing great work. Thanks so much for being on top of this. Good luck with your summit. And again, you can find out more about it at ushsr.com. High-speed rail is not going to happen unless the American people get behind it.
That's right. Thank you so much.
All the way. Thanks so much for coming in.
This is the Bill Press Show.